Well, hello everyone. It's good to see you again. It's Ren here. Welcome to my university. I am not teaching in university. I'm an administrator at university. This has been my job for 2 months and it's going well so far, but we're not meant to talk about me today. I often receive emails. Among the most common emails that I receive are emails from young INFJs who are asking me for advice about what to do in life, and more specifically by what to do in life, they usually mean, what kind of studies to go for, what kind of direction to go, because some INFJs, young INFJs, as is common with any youth, ask themselves what they want to do. Now, INFJs, being N-types, for reasons that we're already familiar with, tend to be more intellectual people, less commonly manual people. So they tend to face the prospect of going to university, and so they often ask me, okay, like what should I do? What should I do? And since I am slightly, I'm not an old INFJ, but I'm an older INFJ in some ways, and I'm 37. I understand that there are certain expectations that I might be able to provide some definite enough answers, and so I want to discuss that a little bit in this video. Okay. Now, if you're interested in what INFJs can do in with this world, in this epoch, also how they can be fulfilled in life, how they can find meaning in life, how they can prioritize precisely what's the most important and relativize what's less important, things that are not always easy to do. You're a human being and you always feel pressure in all directions. Well, there's a book you can get, which is my new book, The Infinite Soul, right? The sequel to The Ecstatic Soul, which you can also get. But The Infinite Soul is a book on the INFJ, written by an INFJ, for INFJs and people of other types that are interested in INFJs. The link is below. Get a copy. It's doing really well so far and people are loving it. Okay, so what would I tell them? Well, the first thing that I want to tell them is there's no way that you can plan everything perfectly, because there's no way that you know yourself enough at this age to know precisely what it is that you absolutely want to do. Now, it's true that among some younger INFJs, some of them have a very strong intuition about what it is that they want to do. It's a minority, to be sure. It's a small section of the INFJ population, but it does happen. It does happen that there's, some INFJs just fall in love with math at age 10 or 12, and they're brilliant at it and they want to do that. Sometimes they're absolutely crazy about physics. Sometimes they're crazy about biology. Often it's more to do with the sciences. INFJs are a bit more literary focused, or more social science oriented, or political science oriented. It tends to be something that comes a bit later in life to quite figure out what is for you. And so if you're not in that very small subsection of people, of INFJs, that are just made for math or for something else, you're in that category where essentially it's impossible at your age, as you're facing the prospect of going to university, for instance, it's impossible to be absolutely certain that this is going to be for you, right? And there's going to be some websites that tell you, okay, INFJ has that profile. They give you what I call a finite conception of type, in the Infinite Soul. Infinite means precisely breaking the shackles of the finite. But the finite conception of type, including the INFJ type, it's a conception that englobes all types, but INFJs are particularly prey to it, but also particularly sensitive to ways in which that can be challenged. I try to showcase that in my own work. But the finite conception of type will usually tell you, okay, INFJs have these functions, INFJs have these particular characteristics. So they would work best as counselors, or they would work best as psychologists. So you could be a student of psychology, you could be a psychoanalyst, you could be a counselor. They work very well as teachers, for example, or academics, or things like that. That's the broad kind of, sense. For example, they'll often tell you, well, coaching is not really for INFJs because that's more of an ENFJ thing. You need to be somewhat more extroverted. Or hard science is more likely to be for INTPs or for INTJs because it's more of a T thing. Now, these finite conceptions, we can discard them. We don't take them too seriously. I don't think anyone in my audience takes them that seriously. But even then, if you broaden the list of what INFJs can do, you're never going to have a broad enough list of things that they can do. Even if we assume, which is not completely true, that INFJs are not, by definition, not attracted to the manual side of things, because there are some INFJs who will enjoy the more manual side of things, who might not be as abstract and intellectual, at least in terms of, a pure, devoid of concreteness type of intellectual that we often think they are. Now, if you hear this noise in the background, please forgive me, but this is completely beyond my control. In fact, I work for a university of medicine, and there's this helicopter essentially bringing in people who need urgent interventions, and they're basically everywhere. So sometimes they do make a lot of noise, and I can only hope that this is not too bothersome, because and this is why I'm getting closer to the screen, because I think it is probably quite bothersome, but there's nothing I can do against that. So no, what I would like to say is that essentially you should allow yourself to make mistakes. You should allow yourself to explore different options. You should, one good approach, right, is to be completely open about, this is going to be over soon. This is going to be over soon. Right. 1 second. 1 second. Yeah. Okay guys, so I just want to apologize if there was like a sudden cut in the video. It's because I had to actually edit somewhat, because there was like a helicopter that just passed by, like for medical interventions, medical emergencies, because I work for University of Medicine and there's a hospital right next to it. So sometimes like helicopters, like they pass by every day and they make unbelievable noise. So I'll have to probably edit this out. But I always say, try to keep your options open. Start something that you think might be good, and possibly start more than just one thing, or have some minors, and don't hesitate to change, especially toward the beginning, because the further you get into something you don't like, the more there'll be a force of inertia that makes you think, oh, I don't have the strength to go back to all the way back to starting something completely new from scratch that is different. And you might just convince yourself that it's better for you to just stick studying something that makes you unhappy. So don't hesitate to take 1 or 2 years to really figure out what it is that you want to do. 1 or 2 years at the scale of life is nothing. So take your time and change, try different things. You start psychology, realize you don't like it, well, maybe you can try geography if you think you might like it better, or you can try, literature, or you can try sociology, I don't know. But just keep your options open and don't hesitate to change, especially towards the beginning, the first 2-3 years, or 1 or 2 years of your university career. Now, one last thing that I want to mention is, and it's a very important point to mention, in fact, is that the one of the strongest, sturdiest forms of pressure that you're likely to experience is the influence that your own family will try to have on you. Sometimes, people, including INFJs, are lucky in that their families are very laid back, and they let you do whatever you want to do. But sometimes, often, particularly if you're smart and your parents know you're smart and you have potential, parents will tend to mold you. They'll tend to kind of influence the particular path that you want to follow. They'll try to say, okay, don't do literary studies, you should do math, you should do science, it's more lucrative, you have more jobs, or you should do IT or whatever, or you should be a doctor because that has status, or supposedly has status. Of course, that comes from a certain sense of parents wanting the best for their children at the level of security and long-term prospects. But usually there's no way it can actually coincide with what makes you happy deep down. You can only rely on yourself. You can take advice and guidance from your parents and from people in your wider family or friends, but always just, I think this word is very important. It's guidance. It's nothing more than guidance. Just because your parents want you to do something, don't do it for that reason. Do what you want to do, and take on board what feedback they might give you, observations, as guidance, but just to guide you. And if you decide to make, if you make a decision that doesn't coincide with what they're saying, that's fine, because ultimately only you yourself will be able to figure out what it is that makes you happy. Your parents might know what's best for you to study if you want to attain like financial security or even viability or wealth. But again, don't forget, I made a video about that recently, what you really want to care about is what makes your soul happy, right? The rest will follow. If your soul's not happy, if your soul is sick, your entire world is upside down and gray, right? So INFJs are FE users. In fact, they're often high enough FE users, auxiliary function, very susceptible to outside influence, more than they want to admit often. And of course, that begins with the influence of your parents. So always be mindful. Your parents, vast majority of the time, they want the best for you, but that doesn't mean that they know what's best for you always, okay? Particularly when it comes to deciding what you want to do in life. You need to learn the art of listening to your soul, all right? And maybe that starts with getting the infinite soul. Da-da-da. All right, guys, I better go back to what I was doing before, namely finishing my work week and then enjoy my weekend. See you soon. In fact, see you tomorrow. I'll be talking to you from my room. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.